Hey there, thanks so much for joining the Jena Show. This is episode 3 where we're going to be talking about making a living outside of the 9 to 5, the norm. We have Heather Thorkelson here today, a special guest from Republic of Freedom, and she's going to be walking us through her journey and transition into owning a business. Heather Thorkelson is a coach, constant traveler, writer, third culture kid, occasional polar expedition guide, and founder of Republic of Freedom, where she serves her primary purpose of helping people create and run healthy location independent businesses based on their strengths and values. She's helped hundreds of people over the past 6 years build livelihoods that allow them to live more freely and be free to do what matters most to them. So welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. So I'm coming live from central Pennsylvania. And Heather, where are you located?
I'm in southern Sweden, right near the border of Denmark.
And I heard you said you have a beautiful view, and it's about 8 o'clock at night, right?
It is. It's about 8 o'clock at night, and at this time of year in Sweden, it gets dark pretty early. Our days get really short, but during the day where I work from, I have this really beautiful view of the sea and some captain's villas across the way on an island across the way. So it's not a bad thing to be looking at to get inspired.
Absolutely. So I'm so glad that you're here as my special guest. I want to get started with kind of taking us back before you owned your own business, and what was it that you were doing? I was reading up about kind of your what you were doing in your 20s before you owned your own business, but kind of walk us through what that looked like in that phase of life.
Sure, yeah. So when I got out of university, of course, like most people, I had a lot of debt. And like most people, or like a lot of people, I didn't want to go into a corporate job. I studied political science with the intention of focusing on international relations and maybe working for an NGO or a multinational corporation, because I grew up traveling and living abroad. Hence my bio, I call myself a third culture kid because I lived outside of Canada, where I'm from, for a lot of my formative years. Mm-hmm. So I don't really have roots anywhere, and I don't really identify wholly with one culture. So my drive when I got out of university was like, all right, how can I kind of, find work that will allow me the freedom of living internationally and doing things a little differently than the norm. I wasn't looking for white picket fences or marriage or kids or anything, So kind of random jobs came up through different opportunities. I went and worked in Mexico and ran a section of a school there. And then I came back to Canada, and most of my work was kind of by accident. And what I ended up doing for the large portion of my 20s was working in a corporate job that wasn't something that allowed me to travel for work. I was a pharmaceutical rep. But what it did do is it allowed me to pay off my debt, which was a big driver for me because I hate debt. Mm-hmm. So it was like pay off debt and make enough money that I can travel whenever I want, which was a big thing for me. I'm like, if I can't travel for work, I need to travel for my soul.
Sure. No, I love that.
So, that work funded that. And interestingly, I hated the job, and I had a really hard time staying in the job, but one of the reasons I took the job is because the person who headhunted me said, look, if you stick around for 5 years, you will be eligible to apply for something called a global health fellowship. And we will essentially send you with your full salary, all expenses paid, and give you a place to live in some developing country. And you can work for a nonprofit there on our behalf, but not as a sales rep. You will just be fulfilling a professional function that they need. And I was like, oh my God.
Perfect.
Yeah. That's exactly what I want to do. Even if it was only like a 6-month gig, I just thought that's cool. You're going to pay me to go and do something that I wanted to do anyways. So I stuck it out the 5 years so that I could get a fellowship, and the competition was super fierce, and I did not have the qualifications for the job, but luckily I tend to do well in interviews, and I managed to do okay in that one. And so they hired me anyways, and I went to Cape Town for 6 months, and I worked with an organization called Mothers to Mothers that helps women who are pregnant and HIV positive give birth to HIV negative babies. Wow. So it's literally an organization that saves lives. So when I came back from that in 2010, I was like, I'm done. Like, I'm a circle. I can't fit into this square box anymore. Uh-huh. This corporate thing, it was killing me. I was super unhealthy. Like, it was manifesting itself in all these weird ways. So luckily my company was downsizing shortly after I came back, and I'd met my goals, right? Like, I wanted to pay off my debt. I wanted to travel a lot, which I did. And I wanted to go on this fellowship. Done and done.
Sure.
They started paying people off, and I was like, I'll take a package. I gotta go do some stuff. So, and the reason I mentioned the whole fellowship and everything is that I realized when I came back from South Africa that I could not continue doing work that didn't hold value for me personally. Sure. It just, like, it depressed me so much. I can't even tell you, to go to work every day doing something that I didn't care about and didn't believe in and didn't believe had value for people. And I thought, I have to do something. I have to find something that helps, you know, like something that's of service to others, especially because I had just been supporting an organization that saves the lives of babies, you know? Right. I mean, it's just a really hard transition to go back to like banal blah work.
Right.
So I left in 2010 and I had no idea what to do. I didn't know that there was the possibility of online businesses. Like, I was completely out of the loop. And this is a really key thing that I think a lot of people who are in jobs don't realize. You're in a job. You're surrounded by people who have jobs. You hear on the horizon about this idea of a internet-based business or something that'll allow you to work from home, and you hear about the pyramid schemes and everything, but right. You don't really know the wealth of options that are available until you start going down that rabbit hole, which is essentially what the rest of my 2010 looked like. I just like started peeling back these layers of ideas and things that I could maybe do. And I mean, the other thing is, if you have a business, if you're working in a job, you have in your mind that you have these skill sets.
Yeah.
Right? And so you're like, what do I do? I can't just do this. Like, my sister is a geologist. You don't just become a freelance geologist.
Right.
You know? So like, a lot of people have that problem making the mental leap. I had a problem making that leap. I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm a salesperson. I'm not even very good at it because I don't like it. I'm like, what am I going to do? Oh my God, I don't want to go back to teaching English. I don't want to go back. I want to do something that means something. So I decided, as a baseline, a good idea, if I was going to work for myself, would be to get certified as a life coach, because even if I wasn't planning to work as a life coach, it's really good to have good people skills.
Right.
So I did that, and I had to work with people to get my certification. So I just started a life coaching business to get through my certification, make some money, because I didn't have a job.
Right.
And then that turned into business consultancy, because it was 2011. A lot of people were starting to really want to open up online businesses, and they were looking at me and saying, I had just moved to Peru as well. I was like, bye Canada. So I moved to Peru, and my life coaching friends were like, how are you finding clients in Peru? Like, are you coaching them in Spanish? And I was like, no, the internet. The internet, Skype, it's amazing. So I started learning so much more about business development and marketing and then teaching people that. And that was sort of the long game that brought me to where I am today, which is with my established consultancy, Republic of Freedom.
And I love the overview. This is all super helpful. Now, for people that are listening or viewing that have any questions regarding making the leap. So like, when I'm assuming you got some sort of package to be able to hold you over during that transition phase from your corporate or previous company into your own business. Did you think at any point, did benefits come to mind? Because I know a lot of people, if they don't have a spouse or a partner that maybe can hold the benefits, you can also, I guess, maybe in your case, did you have to get like independent benefits? You just pay out of pocket, or what were your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a good question. And I mean, I'm fortunate in the sense that I'm Canadian. So we have like most of the healthcare that we would need for free, right? And even though I was living in Peru, I wasn't, on paper, I was still a resident of Canada. And I actually did need some healthcare during the 2.5 years that I lived in Peru, and I just went back to Canada. And so I didn't really have to worry about benefits in that way. There were some things I had to pay out of pocket, and I didn't have a partner that had benefits or anything like that. I'm probably not the best person to ask because I'm young and healthy and I don't have dependents and I haven't had any crises. So it wasn't really top of mind for me because I've always had that socialized healthcare in Canada as my backup.
I know they have good, I know you said you don't have children just yet, or if you decide at some point, but I was reading they have awesome maternity leave. I'm like to my husband, we should just move there.
That's one of the reasons I'm here. And paternity. Now they actually have, I think it's mandatory paternity leave for 1 year. So
that's sweet. Yeah. No, I wish that the US got to grips on getting something changed about that. Cause it's, you literally have to use your savings to stay home for like even a 3-month period, which is
for sure. It's not human friendly.
No. So back on, so you now are, talk to me a little bit. I'm super excited because I was checking out your awesome website. Talk to me about Republic of Freedom. And when you started in 2011, I want to say kind of how it's evolved into what you're doing now. I'm super excited to hear like who you're serving, what you love doing, because I think the purpose behind your business is really awesome and exciting, and that you're able to travel and do what your heart desires, but also serving people along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been an interesting ride because, of course, I started out just life coaching. My business was called Reboot at the time, and the idea behind that was that I had sort of removed myself from this corporate matrix, and I also just want to add, like, for anyone who's in a job, I don't think that everybody should be an entrepreneur. I think it's great that there are a lot of people who are happy with their jobs. But I do not think that the way that we believe work has to happen, 9 to 5 in an office, like those criteria are very outdated and they need to change. So I'm all for people like staying in their jobs, and don't leave if you don't think that entrepreneurship or freelancing is for you. But at least let's start to advocate for different ways of working, because it's not healthy. It's really not healthy.
Thank you for mentioning that. I appreciate you mentioning that, because a lot of times people think, I don't really want to start a business. I like the stability, but they are looking for either telecommuting or a little bit of flexibility with their family, or if they have children. So I appreciate you mentioning that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was seeing my friends who were, in jobs, and they were like a shell of what they could be, like they were like me when I was in the job. They were like, they still are, a lot of them. They're just like, I don't know. I just saw them kind of wasting their talents and feeling like they were very limited, and it made me so sad. So I started my coaching practice helping people like that, helping people like my friends at the time in Toronto, in this fast-paced city, who were sort of like shrinking away as they got older instead of blossoming the way that, so many people do in their 30s. They were like, so I started working with those people, and it was a lot of those people who wanted to make the transition. Some of them anyways wanted to make the transition into freelancing. A lot of the coaches that I went to coaching school with wanted to learn how to grow their coaching business, but they still had jobs as well, and they wanted to make their coaching businesses grow. So I was really working primarily with people making that transition, from work to freelancing or entrepreneurship of some kind.
And real quick on that note, at what point did you find, because I think the side hustle or having something financially to allow for you to be creative and allow for you to decide, what, if you're going to do freelance, if you want to be an entrepreneur, and what your product or service is going to be, it allows for you that time so you don't feel like you're just jumping off the boat and then you're in survival mode. And then you it gives me chills because I know what that's like.
Yeah.
So did you find that your clients at that point, when were they willing to let go? Was it a financial? They felt like there was stability at some point and consistency?
Yes, definitely. I think there was, financial stability was one thing for sure. And I'm definitely a big proponent of having some savings in the bank that you can live off for a while, because the number one thing that I see people miss when they make the leap is that they think everything is going to happen really fast. They think that they're going to get up to a sustainable income and replace their old income possibly in a much shorter period of time than it actually happens. And myself, I mean, I did this coaching stuff for a while. My corporate package money ran out completely. And so I taught myself web design, and I started like building people's websites on the side so that I could have more income, because I was not going back to a job.
I know. You're like, set in your mind. You're like, there's no going back.
Absolutely. I was like, no way. I will do whatever it takes. But like, I don't want to leave my house. Like, I mean, I lived in Peru, right? So it's not like I speak Spanish, but I didn't want to go and take a job from a Peruvian, and I didn't want to have a job. I mean, it's hard to be a foreigner and get a job in another country. Sure. You have to get a work visa, and there's it's complicated, and it's a 9-to-5. There's no such thing as a non-9-to-5, right? So at least, well, maybe in Sweden there is, but in Peru there wasn't. So I was like, I just have to find creative ways to generate more income so that I can continue to build my business to where I need it to be. So that's an important piece of the story. And I think that it's really important that people who have already made the leap and who are struggling financially understand that there is no shame in taking some part-time work or finding other streams of income in order to build the primary business. You know, it doesn't mean you're abandoning plan A at all. It just means it's a detour, and, you know, you're funding the baby.
No, I love that you mentioned that, because you have that vision in mind that you're working towards, but by all means, whatever you need to do to help. The big piece I feel like is financially, you need to be able to support that. And I think when you come under so much stress, it almost like, I was reading Big Magic, and it's almost like it doesn't allow for you to express your creativity or like find alternatives, because you're in like this financial mode of like, I need to pay the bills and I need to, you know, so
exactly.
Are you doing a lot of like online networking? Like, how are you finding these jobs? I know we have plenty, like in the US, we have a lot of different options, like your Career Builder, your Monster, Indeed, Craigslist, all kinds of different industry like networking. But what worked for you? What do you usually recommend for finding these like side jobs?
You know, well, because I specifically did web design, I decided to do web design. I was really fortunate, and I don't know if things are the same 5 years later, but in 2011, there were a lot of people in like just circles that I knew online, mostly Facebook groups. There were a lot of people that were looking for simple, budget-friendly websites, and I was making simple, budget-friendly websites. So like, I would make one for someone, and then they'd refer their friend, and I'd make one for them. And like, it just, simple referrals and having a few people is what kept me going. So I didn't use any services. I didn't do any advertising at all. I just sort of put word of mouth out there. And when people would post in Facebook groups and say, oh, I kind of need a website, but I only have $800, I'd be like, oh, I'll do it. Yeah. So it was really just an organic growth of the side business like that. And I fostered it until I didn't need it anymore. And then I kicked it to the curb.
And I'm just curious real quick, because I know WordPress versus like Squarespace, like back then, was it still WordPress or was there a different platform?
Yeah, no, I was using WordPress. Yeah, I was building WordPress sites.
You have some good skills, because I know that takes some time.
Yeah, well, I learned code and everything. Like, I was doing a lot of, oh my gosh, I built the 2 first iterations of my site, I built on my own. I like coded on my own. I used a theme, but it required a lot of technical knowledge. So, but I'm that kind of person. Like, I was telling you earlier, I think that I made curtains for my kitchen. I have never made curtains before. I just bought some fabric, and nothing. I just bought some fabric. I measured the window, and then I looked at some other curtains that I bought, and I was like, oh, okay, so that's how they did it. All right. And then I just sewed them up, and I threw them up in the kitchen right before this call, and my husband was like, oh my God, they look great. And I was like, thanks.
I'm sure if you decided to have kids, you would be the mom that like is making the costumes and like we just had a party for my daughter's school, like a harvest party, like all decked out. Yeah. You would totally, if you decided to have kids, like that would probably be the mom you are.
Yeah, totally. Because I'm the kind of person that just figures things out. If I want to do something or make something, if I want to build a website, I just figure it out. I watch some YouTube videos on coding and I make it happen. So that served me well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So then talk to us, what was the next phase then from what you were doing with your side, freelance work into?
Yeah. So I rebranded from the Reboot. Well, that was around 2012. I turned it into the Republic of Freedom. And in 2013, I sort of upgraded everything to more or less what you see now on my site. And the reason why I decided to go with Republic of Freedom, because at this point, again, it was like a demand thing, right? I didn't start out thinking, I'm going to be an online business consultant. But so many people were asking me to help them, like friends or people that I knew. They're like, oh, how did you do that? Can you help me? And then I was like, I should just turn this into an offering or a package or whatever. So the reason I decided on Republic of Freedom is because what I had been doing post 2010 was constantly making decisions in service of maintaining my own level of freedom. I didn't want to become a slave to one-on-one clients. I didn't want to become a slave to like running a Facebook group or anything like this. There were all these little things about how I was building my business and the choices that I was making, where I was living, how much travel I was doing, how much I was incorporating travel into my creative work, into my blogging and that kind of thing, that I decided, okay, so what I'm doing here with my life is I'm creating my own little version of the world. I'm creating my own little republic of freedom, and the rules around how I exist are mine.
I love that.
And so people would say to me, like my mom, she'd be like, oh, honey, not everybody wants to like live, in another country. And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm saying. Your republic of freedom may be that you want to spend 3 days a week at home with your children and 2 days a week at a co-working space.
Mm-hmm.
And, then whatever, like it might be, you might never want to leave your little tiny town that you live in. It doesn't matter. The parameters for how you want to build your lifestyle are entirely yours. Your republic of freedom is yours. My republic of freedom is mine. Everyone has their own. And I thought, how brilliant to ditch all the formulas, which most of the time are false promises anyways,
right,
and actually just help people think critically and make the best decisions in service of the values that they want to live their life around.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how this iteration of my business, that's been going almost 4 years now, came to pass. And so what I did is I created a product called the Leap Guide with one of my former clients who now runs the Freelance to Freedom project. And she's like gone off. She's huge now, Leah Kalamakis. So we created the Leap Guide together, which is sort of like the Bible for how do you start when you're sitting in your cubicle and you have a million questions, what's next, right? So the Leap Guide is that. It's like, okay, here are all the things you need to think about. Here are all the questions you need to ask. Here's a bunch of worksheets. Here's how to like work it all out and figure it out and make next steps. So that let me move a little bit away from the people who are making the transition so that I could focus on helping people build the next level of their business and their existence.
No, this totally makes sense, the way that you explain the transition, because you're helping them get to the point that they've identified that they're ready for that next phase, and then you would help them from that point build out, whether it's freelance or entrepreneur, products and services. So real quick, rewind back to the travel piece. Do you build in to help with your current business and just for your spirit to feel like full and alive? Do you and your husband, or do you travel independently throughout the year, like each quarter? Like, do you typically like pre-plan and then just prepay those and then work as you go? I'm really interested in hearing how that all like is planned out.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting because I only got residency in Sweden in August. And prior to that, I moved away from Peru in 2013. So for 2.5 years, I was in love with a Swede, but I could only, because I met him in 2013, I could only come to Sweden for 3 months at a time. And then I had to be out of Sweden for 3 months.
Oh, wow.
And so I couldn't actually have a residence anywhere. It didn't make sense to like be paying rent somewhere, because what do I do? Do I go back home to Canada for 3 months and then come to Sweden for 3 months? Because he sort of needed to be based here. I mean, he works internationally, but whatever. So it's just really kind of complicated. And so the last 2.5 years, more out of necessity than anything, have been us sort of bouncing around. And it's not planned. We're just kind of like, all right, well, we have like a month to kill until we're going to go do that. So let's go to Iceland and road trip, or like, let's go to Canada first, visit the family, and then like, let's road trip. We love road tripping. Uh-huh. So like, we just pick a place and go there, and like, oh, now I'm allowed to go back into Sweden. Let's go to Sweden and hang out there until whatever. And I just work, I've been really spoiled, to be honest. Like, I live primarily and I work around my life. So I'm working regularly. I might be on vacation. I'm never really on vacation. I'm road tripping in Iceland, but like, two summers ago, I was road tripping in Iceland and I was tethered to 3G on my phone, writing the content for the Leap Guide, and then my husband would be like, or he was my boyfriend at the time, he'd be like, oh my God, look at that view. And we'd like stop the car and I'd ditch the computer and we'd run around in Iceland taking pictures and stuff, and then back in the car and continue on, because I find that I am at my most creative when I'm in motion, you know, when I'm on a plane, when I'm in a car, when I'm like looking at beautiful things. And so I work as an extension of who I am, and I build it into the lifestyle that I have. So there's not a lot of planning. However, because my husband is a polar guide, I met him on a ship in Antarctica. I have been working with him seasonally, a month or two here and there every year because I want to, because I don't want to be without him, because I like him a lot.
And is that the trip that you're about to go on? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, and actually, this is the first one that he won't be with me. I'm going to be going down for 5 weeks because I have to train people to do my job on the ship that I've been working on, because I have a really specialized job on this ship. And it's been a really huge headache trying to fill the role. So I'm going down now for 5 weeks to work and have fun and everything, but also train some replacements, because now that I have my residency in Sweden, I want to pull back from that. And my husband's not working on the ships as much. He's doing other things. So because we've built another company, a polar travel agency. So we're shifting gears a little bit. And but I mean, the wonderful thing about the business that I have is that, like, I can do this. If I want to press pause for 5 weeks or 2 months and be like, bye, I'm going to go and like drive boats in Antarctica and look at whales and penguins.
I love that. Yeah.
Then I can, you know? And in the beginning, when I first did it in 2013, not many people, but mostly people who don't work in the online world, mostly like, you know, my family. And they were like, what's going to happen to your business if you go away? And I was like, well, nothing. All of my clients know. And moreover, they expect it of me. Like, one of the reasons why people are drawn to my business and to me is because I'm actually doing
what they would love to be doing.
Things.
Yeah.
But I'm not like a poor nomad either. You know, like I'm not like eking away my existence with my computer on the beach, like trying to make money for the next country. Like I live well, you know, and I have a really nice home now in Sweden, but I can get up and get on a plane whenever I want. And I can press pause on the business and tell my clients, I'm going to be back in 5 weeks. We'll talk then. And they're like, right on. Can't wait to see the pictures. See you later. Typical Heather, you know?
And that I love that you say that, because they are looking to you as not only like a mentor or coach, but that you are living out your freedom and like what you would love to be doing with your life. And that encourages and motivates them, I'm sure, to be like, okay, if she can do it, I'm going to figure out what works best for me, you know?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about the business. It was something about going back. Oh, so with your current business then, how are you able to are you mainly still getting word of mouth, like recommendations, referrals, or are you having to do anything different now?
No, it's my business. I mean, really my only proper marketing up until now has been blogging. I blog, and so people find me from my blog and they find me via referral. Referral is a big one. Podcasts are a big one. I get a lot of people finding me through like hearing me on a podcast, and I love them. I love doing podcasts. So it's been mostly that. This year is the first year that I've ever done anything like Facebook ads, and they've mostly been experimental to see if it, you know, makes a difference. In like a course that I ran in September, I wanted to see if it would make an impact. So I really haven't done much, and I don't have yet anyways. I don't have much of a marketing budget because my business has been able to sustain me just from spending 5 years building it. You know, there's enough people that know about me. There's enough people that like me or have had a good experience with me that when they meet someone else, they're like, you should totally go and check out Heather. And that's great. I'm so grateful.
Did you find, going back to the Facebook ads, did you find that those were beneficial depending on, like you said, you had a course or maybe the guide? Did you find that was worth the investment?
Definitely worth the investment. What I found, and this is an interesting thing that I want to play with because I think it depends on what you're marketing. What I found is that they weren't people they were so new to me that the know, like, and trust factor wasn't there yet to buy my course, but it boosted my mailing list quite significantly, and those people have stayed on it. So they found me, they're interested in what I'm doing, they're getting some kind of value out of what I'm putting out into the world, and maybe the next time I run that course, or maybe the next time I offer something, it will be a right fit for them. So it was good in that. It didn't directly affect my course.
Got it.
But it's the long game.
Right. It's that initial, they call it like the dating phase. You got them in, and then you're nurturing them and nurturing the relationship. And then once you said the no trust, what am I missing?
No, like, and trust.
No, like, and trust. And I feel like that's because just like anyone, they don't want to usually spend their money until they really know, like, is this person an expert, and like, do they know their stuff, what they're talking about?
Yeah.
Very good. And you mentioned podcasts. Do you happen to have your own podcast, or are you mainly like a guest on other podcasts?
I'm a guest on other podcasts. I do have some plans in 2017 to start one. I've been badgered very gently by a lot of people about starting a podcast. So it's something that I've got on the back burner, but it's mostly just me going on other people's podcasts because I love it. Every time someone's like, oh, I'm looking for new guests, I'm like,
you're like, hey. I love that you're quick volunteer and like quick to learn things. One thing when I was doing some research on like, and I'm sure you've already done your research on the podcasting, is that they have like the little travel kits. So how cool would that be? Like if you're traveling and you're doing like either live or recorded podcasts on the road or like during your road trips. I think that would be super awesome for your viewers and listeners.
Totally. And that's a big driving factor actually, is because so many people have been saying exactly that to me. They're like, why aren't you like recording stuff in Antarctica? And also like when I'm on the ship, like I work, seasonally with my husband on ships, both in Antarctica and the Arctic. And these are not cheap places to go. And the ships that we work on are pretty fantastic expedition ships. And we meet the coolest people ever. Like it is so amazing who I get to hang out with. Like I met one of the two co-founders of Cirque du Soleil, spent 10 days with him, hanging out with him and his wife. The guy who invented Siri on the iPhone, Henry Rollins, the old singer of Black Flag, like just really, really interesting people. And like, I've got them in front of me for 10 days.
Yeah.
I could be like, let's sit down for 30 minutes and have the chat. I could make podcasts up on the fly. It would be great. So I really need to, and not just on the ships, but I tend to meet like really cool people on the ships, but also when I'm traveling around, like there's so many opportunities. And also, as I said, I'm mostly inspired creatively when I'm on the road. So whether it's an interview-based podcast or even just me podcasting on a topic, being out in the world is a great place to generate that stuff that people will get value from.
Oh, that's super exciting. I wanted to see what else. Oh, as far as like the individuals that you're serving, what type of like dream or like target clients typically migrate to either like reading your blogs or really interested in your services? What type, can you kind of describe who typically you run into?
For sure. So it's changed a lot over the years, and I'm finding that 2016 has been a really interesting year of an interesting shift that's brought me to realize that my clients don't fall into one demographic category. It's not just women. I have a lot of men. It's not one age group. There are people from like 25 to 65. What I'm realizing is that the people who come to me and who stick around and who are super loyal are there because we share the same values. They really resonate with the way that I live and the things that I talk and I write about. The people who I work with who end up hiring me are usually primarily people who are similar to me in the sense that they're very resourceful and they're go-getters. Mm-hmm. I don't hold hands. Like I'm like an idea freak. Like I spend an hour and 15 minutes with you. I give you 10 million different ideas to think about and to possibly implement, and then you go and run with it. And so the people who are the most attracted to work with me and who I love working with are those people who are really self-sufficient, but they need an extra brain to kind of look in on their stuff and like fiddle it around and say, forget about this and like go in that direction. And it's not so much advice. Like I ask a lot of questions. Most of what I do is ask questions. And then I say, okay, based on what you said, forget about this. Like, don't even think about that anymore. That's a waste of your time, right? Because you don't want to do that anyways. What about this? What about this? What about this? And they're like, oh my God, amazing. And then they run with it. So I will say as well that's the personality type and the values, as you can see from reading my website. But it's also not just entrepreneurs. It's not just freelancers. I have people who have brick and mortar businesses. I have people who are already successful entrepreneurs or whatever, and they have a passion project that they want to get off the ground, but they don't know where to start, and they don't know what is the best strategy from A to B to really give it life, and so I get kind of a really interesting mix of people in that way. So it's not cut and dry, but I hope kind of gives
No,
you
that does. It actually broadens, like it gives me more insight. Do you have like a preference of the type of client that is more like exciting to work with, or it just depends on like what it is that they're getting into, personality?
I think it's just the preference for me of working with people is just working with people who feel like, who have a great relationship with possibility.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are a lot of people who see nothing but roadblocks,
Right.
or you know, and that's different from feeling overwhelmed by all the options. Everybody feels overwhelmed. You know, everyone is kind of like, oh my God, don't know where to start. Like everybody, self included. But there are those people who, in spite of feeling overwhelmed with all the options, are like, I think I have a really good idea here, and I'm really interested in making this happen. Like I'm going to make this happen. I just need to figure out the path.
Right.
You know, and that's a distinct kind of a character, you know, that's just like got that fire burning in them, and they're like, no, I'm gonna make this work. You know, it's just gotta figure out the path. I love those people. I love them. It is such a joy to support them, you know, and make things easier for them, because really at the end of the day, that's what I do. Right. I make things easier for you, because it's, nobody can do it alone. Nobody can look at all the different options and see it objectively. And when you cannot see your business objectively, you can't make smart decisions about it. So, you know, whether it's a friend, like a business friend, or a coach like me or whatever, you can't do it alone. You really need to get someone who can give you that objectivity to be smart about how you do things.
And you talked about working one-on-one. Talk to me a little bit about your services. Are you doing not only the one-on-ones, you have the courses? What do you have? Kind of take me behind the scenes of what's happening within your business.
Yeah. So I have the Leap Guide. I have a course that I run about once a quarter called 30 Days to Done, which is all about shipping your work. It's really heavy on accountability. I teach some key business skills in 30 Days to Done, like better decision making, better time management, that kind of thing. And that's great. We just had a run of it in September, and it was awesome. It was so much fun, and people got, like, they just made so much progress in their business. It was amazing. And also like growth in themselves, you know, because I really like to see not just like you're checking the boxes on your to-do list, but that you're growing as an entrepreneur. You're getting better at entrepreneuring or better at freelancing, you know. It's great. So I do that. So those two courses, and then I have my one-on-one, which I only have one option. It's called the Mini Mastermind, and it's an hour and 15 minutes, which doesn't sound long, but you would be shocked at how much we can do.
Yeah.
And so I have that, and that's my primary thing. And if we work together for a mini mastermind and we really get along and I love what you're doing, I give those people the option of staying on with me on retainer. So I do have some, every month I have anywhere from 5 to 7 retainer clients that I have a monthly call with and check in with them. In the new year, what I'm going to be doing is offering some live workshops, like actual workshops where things happen. So I'm not just sitting there talking at you, but like we create new content together, or we revise something together, like 3-hour-long workshops. So that's a really exciting shift in my business for 2017.
Good. So that was your forecast, something coming up. When you say live, are we talking in person or live?
Live online like this,
Online.
like with Zoom or with Crowdcast or something. Yeah, like a guided workshop with me where there's some actual takeaways, because I'm such a person of action. Like there's so many online courses, there's so many PDF versions of things that you can download, and I like action. I want the people who interact. I want anyone who gives me money to walk away going, holy crap, that's amazing. I have just leveled up big time. That everyone who works with me should feel that way. That's my personal commitment, you know?
Right. And I love that you have the background. Not only did you teach yourself like the website, but I feel like you have many facets of the business experience as well as the life coach. So it's really finding that balance between life and work, which is like my passion of not only finding your purpose in what it is that you're doing, whether you're working for a company or independently, but that you have all these really great skills that you've taught yourself. And you remind me of myself, like that if you don't know something, you're going to research it and spend time investing in yourself to learn this new skill or specialty.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
So any other information you want to share with our viewers and listeners? Because I want to get some last words of advice and some recommendations from you.
For sure. This might actually fall into one of the questions that you're about to answer me, but I'm just going to throw it out there in case, because I think it's super important. A lot of people talk about sort of, creating their dream life or their dream business and like finding their passion and all this kind of stuff. And I think the number one most important thing that has driven me to the sense of contentment that I have with my life right now and my business in the state that it's in, which I'm so happy with right now, is that I've always been hyper clear on what I don't want. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is something that people forget about a lot. They plan businesses, they plan products, they plan ideas, and they don't think about what are the implications of that in the long run. What will that make me happy, or will it make me feel like a slave to my business, right, or whatever? I know absolutely with 100 million% clarity what I don't want. And so every time I'm looking at next steps and building, I'm like, is this going to lead me closer to what I don't want? Or is it going to continue to give me the freedom that I want to have? So I would just encourage anyone who's listening to like literally get a pen and paper and say like, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to have to, like, hand holding, right? I don't want to hand hold clients. Right. It's not my style. Don't want to hand hold, never build something where that's going to become a byproduct. And that'll help a lot. And that'll help you avoid a lot of pitfalls.
And I love that you mentioned it's kind of making it your own sense of freedom and your own journey, because like you said, you don't want to have the responsibility of a Facebook group. And that's something I've been evaluating. Like, am I doing it because that's the trend right now? Because every day I'm like, I'm not super excited about doing that. So when I hear you say that, I'm like, okay, so it's my own journey. I don't have to follow the same footsteps. And maybe it's okay to like let that go on my I do not want to pursue list.
Yeah. It's definitely something to think about.
Very good. So thank you for that word of advice. I always like to ask my guests, any words, not words of advice, any books, audibles, other podcasts that are your like go-tos that you think are really resourceful?
Yeah. Do I have it here? Yeah, I actually do. This is how much I love it. I reference it. The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. This is like the Bible. This is what everybody who is working for themselves should read. The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. This thing, anything he's written is fantastic, but this deals with resistance. This deals with, like, he dissects and goes so deep into our mind games with ourselves. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, I read this in the beginning, and like when I first started out, I have sent this to, I don't know, dozens, maybe over 100 different people, because I always send out books after people work with me. Okay. This has ended up in the hands of a lot of people. It is just so valuable. It says the subtitle is Break Through Your Blocks and Win Your Inner Creative Battles. Mm-hmm. So, anyone who's doing any kind of freelancing online and trying to like figure out how to market and trying to blog consistently or anything like that, right, this is critical. It's a critical book.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Heather, for all the words of wisdom and feedback and really taking us through your experience and your journey to where you are today. Definitely check out Heather at Republic of Freedom. She is also on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and I'm sure there's a few others.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to seeing everyone back here next Thursday at 2:00 p.m. And thank you again, Heather. Have a great
Thank you so much. It's been great.
Bye-bye.
Bye.